Hello everyone. On behalf of the Henry Halloran Urban and Regional Research Initiative, I would like to welcome you to this public lecture today. But before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the First Nations that are the original owners of the land, and I'd like to acknowledge the knowledge that's forever embedded in Aboriginal custodianship of the land. So the Henry Halloran Urban and Regional Research Initiative was established at the University of Sydney in 2013 as a result of the generous donation of Warren Halloran. The gift honoured his father Henry, an active advocate for town planning in the first half of the 20th century. Our goal is to promote scholarship, innovation and research in town planning, urban development and land management. And to do this, we have a suite of public events and also collaborations within the university and also wider academic community and other universities. And also, we also collaborate with practitioners, and that's really, really important to us. And we're really focusing on research translation as well, which is one of the things that I'm personally very interested in as well. So yeah, with that, I would like to hand over to Dr. Sophia Marlson to introduce our special guest today. Thank you.
Thanks, Greta. So yes, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce you today to Dr. Sung-Yuen, who is an associate professor at the Institute of Science, Technology and Society at the National Yang-Ming Chiao Tong University in Taiwan. Sung-Yuen and I actually first met probably well over 10 years ago now in our first roles as postdoctoral students at the Programmable City project in Ireland. So very happy to be continuing our connections. So Sung-Yuen contributes to national and international journals in various editorial capacities, including Big Data and Society, which he's co-editor, East Asia Science, Technology and Society, of which he's executive director, and the Taiwanese Journal for Studies of Science, Technology and Medicine, which he's editor-in-chief. He is the holder of Academia Sinica and National Science and Technology Council Young Researcher Awards, and his research draws on science and technology studies, geography and sociology to examine emerging digital technology and its wider societal implications. In his recent projects, he has explored the infrastructural and historical making of AI cities in Taipei and Yokohama, and reconsidered the positions of East Asia in producing digital futures. His current collaborative project with myself, but mainly it's all of Sung-Yuen, I'm just riding on his coattails, seeks to understand how algorithmic capabilities have been appropriated in climate and decarbonisation actions, and what social, ethical and political issues emerge in this process. So Sung-Yuen, over to you.
Thank you, Greta and Sophia, for inviting me to give the talk today. Oh, right, okay, here. So it's a great honor to be here. Sophia has really downplayed her importance in the project as well as the process through which we develop our collaborative projects and papers and publications. So it's really great to come here and talk more about what we are working on and share something that we are working on and developing to you as well. Right. So I will try to speak slowly and clearly, but if you don't understand me or if I confuse you anyways, just let me know. I can start over. So this is not just my work. It's a collaborative project with a lot of people, including Sophia and Zhixiang here. And together, we are looking at how different cities and different countries are mobilizing decarbonization actions as a part of response to climate change. We started by looking at Australia, Japan, and Taiwan for obvious reason. Australia because there was one day Sophia and I were talking about doing collaborative project again, and this is kind of the things that was on our mind. And so we started to explore what's happening in different countries and in different cities, and how they plan their futures and work with different kinds of technology. Japan has been one of the important countries in producing AI and digital technologies in East Asia region, but sometimes more its influence is much more broader. And Zixiang is really interested in Japanese culture and Japanese society, and she brings that kind of knowledge and insights to the project. So that kind of says why, I'm trying to say why this is interesting for us and what we want to do in today particularly. So we started thinking that everyone should do their bits in terms of responding to the climate crisis, but the problem is how they are going to do that and what kind of decarbonization strategies they plan and they propose to do, especially when a lot of the planning and the actions are relying on digital technologies and also things like AI and machine learning to achieve certain kinds of results, mainly efficiency and optimization. So how do these technologies got brought into different decarbonization actions and planning, and what kind of effects they are likely to produce? So essentially, it's also a question of asking what kind of societal futures might be delivered through these actions and strategies, and the ways that we use and understand this technology are really critical in terms of shaping how we are going to live through this climate crisis. Initially, as I said, we have different interests in our different societies, but somehow they are really very connected. On the one hand, we are all producing large amounts of CO2 per person. We are at a similar level with United States, people of Republic of China. We are only slightly less than United Arab Emirates. But then Japan and Taiwan are the two of the leading Australian coal exports. In other words, we consume a lot of the coal produced here, as well as coal. Gas is another thing that we rely on Australia a lot. So in a way, these three countries are all connected, and they have different ways. They have different decarbonization targets and different kinds of strategies. But they are also very much embedded in very different societal, political, and cultural backgrounds. Taiwan, as a developing country, has been trying to grow their economy at the cost of its environment. But when these emission standards or emission targets are produced or announced globally, because Taiwan is not internationally recognized, so we are not obliged to achieve those goals, but still we do that. There are various reasons. One is for international presence, but also for economic alignment reasons. But the downside of that is that we are doing it incoherently and with limited effects. So if we look at the extent that we try to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, you can see it's almost a flat line. But the story with Japan is somewhat different. They have limited energy resources. They have been hit by many different natural, social, and economic crises throughout the past 30 to 40 years. Most importantly, the Daiichi nuclear disaster was one of the important reasons that Japan is trying to make their energy resources independent and less dependent on other countries. But they have been trying to produce and promote and deploy climate and decarbonization policies from early 2020s. That's the kind of the broader story of Japan. In Australia, I'm sure you know much more better than I do. But the national policies on climate change is a lot of the influences are coming from the election results. But there are new sets of policies coming in from 2021, but we can discuss that a bit later. So what I was trying to say is that all those different targets and different numbers are tightly embedded in the kind of national, cultural, political, and historical events that happened in this decade or previous decade. So it's really important to look at how these different net zero plans are being conceived and rolled out in different national contexts. So I will start with doing that and then start looking at how different digital technologies are being incorporated in these plans, as well as look at what kinds of future that we are headed in different countries. I will start with Australia because that's all you will be more familiar with. So I will use that as a starting point. In 2021, the Australian long-term emissions reductions plans were published, and in the plan, it's mainly focused on using technology to maintain its energy and agricultural exports. And in some ways, they are also trying to advance their technologies through scientific collaborations or innovation collaborations with different countries, so that their leading status can be consolidated. There are several different policies being announced looking at hydrogen energies, low emissions technologies, but there are also some kind of plans in terms of in the National Climate Resilience and Adaptation Strategy, trying to establish a collaborative partnership with communities in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island peoples in terms of embedding their ecological and environment knowledge into decarbonization actions. So as you can see from the graph they produce, there's a lot of emphasis on using different kinds of technology for decarbonization processes and in different areas. So very much technology-driven and economic-focused plans. In Japan, their plans and their national strategies are slightly different. Although the most obvious one is the basic policy for the realization of green transformation, there have been different plans or strategies that have already been rolled out previously or in support of that. So some of those are basic hydrogen strategy and regional decarbonization roadmaps. But again, we can see a lot of emphasis on energy supplies and using technology to do for that purposes, and using a pro-growth initiative or approach in terms of deploying their carbon pricing and global actions. But but if you look at more closely into what kind of areas they have been focusing on, you can see that it is not just about technology and markets. A lot of those are still there, but if you can see the national and the local government's own efforts to lead the society, there are more emphasis on how to use this technology for the benefits of people living in different areas, not just, for example, in the urban area or in the cities or in the affluent areas or sections of the society, but more broadly to embed those technological advancements into the society as a whole. So for Japan, it's trying to promote a more comprehensive policies, although still looking at technological development and economic growth. They try to bring those much more embedded into different ways of people's life. This is Taiwan's national strategy, so Taiwan's 2015 net zero transition strategies. It looks very neat and clear, but the main reason for that is that because we've conceived and announced these plans after later than many other countries, and so in a way we'll be able to learn from the lessons of the national strategies of other countries and to try to focus on the 4 areas that we wanted to highlight. And some of the interesting things for me is that there is more of focus on lifestyle transition and the social transition in the sense of something sometimes is corresponding to what we have observed in Japan, trying to use these technologies in decarbonizations in everyday aspects. So for example, in buildings, and try to improve buildings either with technologies or through different building materials so as to decarbonize the carbon emissions from building constructions and running different buildings. And in terms of transportation, it's not about just about providing electric vehicles, but also trying to promote different ways of travel cultures. So the different phases of transition was announced in 2022, and there are more specific goals in different phases that the government tries to achieve. And a lot of that is try to bring some sort of social considerations into the course of decarbonization. So I guess one of the things that is that although there's a shared goal of decarbonization, there are different kinds of very different manifestations of how decarbonizations can proceed. And if you want to visualize that, to visualize those policies, this is how different countries can look like. So for Japan, the basic policy for the realization of green transformation is the most apparent one, but it's been supported by a series of strategies and plans throughout the years. And it's been supported also by different technology and science policies that do try to produce and promote their scientific efforts. Even their AI strategy in 2019 also have sections that emphasize on using AI for sustainability goals. But for Taiwan, you can see that it's quite until recently that we have produced or put together a more coherent national policy on transition. And in Australia as well, is more of a recent policy development rather than, as compared with Japan, the contrast is very clear. So one decarbonization, but many manifestations. Net zero transitions have different national contexts, and whether that's for energy independence for Japan and Taiwan, or consolidating lead in an energy and competitiveness of traditional industries in Australia. When we look at decarbonization and net zero transitions, all these factors need to be taken into account, and to a certain degree, these are the factors that really change or shape how decarbonization takes form. But we can also see that technologies in net zero transitions takes a very important role. As we have seen in different countries that they have different ways of employing them, but they rely, that net zero transition is going to rely on technology in a massive way. But a lot of that is going to become digitally focused, whether it is the smart grid or it is the different electrification of transport infrastructure. Digital technologies are playing increasingly important roles in our planning for net zero transition. So again, coming back to Australia, it is really technologically focused, but not necessarily digitally. There are plans for digital grid, for smart charging systems, but a lot of the technologies that Australia is trying to develop is trying to consolidate their leading status in different traditional and emerging industries. But in Japan, as I've alluded to, there's also even emphasis in different national policies, including AI strategies published in 2022. There are different innovation strategies, either in AI strategy or in different policies that look at how to use data analysis for greenhouse emissions, how to use AI for CO2 reduction and energy saving, and looking at the kind of carbon footprints of AI itself. They are also trying to see if there are innovative ways to run AI systems without producing that much amount of carbon footprints. They are taking a much more infrastructural in terms of the expansion of the data infrastructure and the data platforms, so that the data produced from this infrastructure and these different new technologies can be used again, so that they can continuously reevaluate what's going on and how they can adapt. So, for example, in the environment, circular society, and the biodiversity, sorry, I forgot to translate that one. They look at how to use AI to detect leaking from air conditioning devices, and afterwards how to use that data to feed back into the maintenance and the usage, the monitoring, so that these leakages won't cause too much harm to biodiversity. There are a lot of sections in the regional decarbonization roadmaps that specifically look at how to use digital technologies to revitalize or regenerate regional development. And one of the big concern is that there's the Tokyo is the biggest city and is taking away a lot of economic, industry, and population and labor into the Tokyo metropolitan area. And so how that kind of urban and regional imbalance was a major concern for Japan. So for them, how they can use digital technologies is one of the key things they have their national planners have been focusing on. So they have been they have not only looked at big cities, but also looking at regions and how these technologies can be used both for the development of regional areas as well as for decarbonization purposes. So, for example, using AI and different smart intelligent devices for mass transportation as a service, or using smart LED lighting to provide better street experiences, or using AI and ICT to save the energy costs for households, or using solar panels or connecting solar panels into the smart grid in order to more effectively use solar energy and for different households to maintain their everyday life. So what they are emphasizing is not just the development of the bigger cities, but also looking at villages and countrysides and how this kind of urban regional imbalance can be addressed while using these particular decarbonization policies, as well as other local regenerations strategies too. In Taiwan, there's a focus on technology R&D again. So if I go back to Taiwan's plan, so technology R&D is one of the foundations in the governance of climate. So again, really focusing on using technology for decarbonization purposes. But it's for a specific, it has a specific purpose. For Taiwan, it's very important to try to combine its advancement in ICT manufacturing as well as different kind of manufacturing industries and processes, so that that kind of manufacturing industries can sustain through the decarbonization process. There are many areas. In order to do that, they have identified many areas in the phased goals and actions towards net zero transition published in 2022, including better control and management systems in smart grid, digital resilience, and in concrete and steel and textile industries. So in Taiwan, these tend to be small to medium-sized companies, and therefore they have to use more low-cost or lower-cost strategies, or helping these companies to better leverage this digital innovation in terms of letting them understand how this can help them, or try to making their production processes more efficient. So there are other areas that are focused on in these policies, including smart energy systems and smart buildings as well. There's a lot of support from national science funding for the storage of electricity, for the accelerated demand and response time, for the grid management. So again, these kind of developments require a lot of data analytics, and therefore is another example of trying to combine the advancement in ICT with different areas in order to achieve better decarbonization results. One of the things that have been a topic that many government or private investors are excited about is using digital twins for offshore wind power. So I basically use the digital twin idea to monitor and to maintain the operations of wind turbines. And for Taiwan, the key is not just to produce energy from wind turbine or renewable sources, but also to develop the technologies to monitor and to maintain wind turbines. That would become a selling point for Taiwan to become an Asian-Pacific technology hub for this kind of digital technology. So these are some of the ways digital technologies have been included in the use for decarbonization purposes. But there is a key issue of what kind of societal futures that can be produced from here. How many time do I still have?
Oh, lots.
Okay.
So
Right. So a lot of things that needs to be discussed is in terms of what kind of societal futures that would emerge from this heavy use of technologies, particularly digital technology, in net zero transition, and also also justice is a key way to frame. Although justice has become a key way of framing this kind of discussion, it can also become problematic in different national contexts. So other terms have been proposed. For example, ethical, equitable, or inclusive transition processes might be some of the ways in which not to speak about justice, but more speak about these different ethical values to respond to different societal or cultural concerns. But in Taiwan, so for example, in Taiwan, we call that social transition and use just transition and civic engagement to pursue the goal of leaving no one behind as a way of our interpretation of what just is in our context. But it's different. What what just means is different in different national contexts or societal contexts. As far as I understand, in Australia, this term is becoming very contested. It's becoming a dichotomy between jobs or environment in many political debates. And to the extent that we try to find mentioning of just transition or just as the word or justice, we couldn't find those words in the policy documents, but instead ethical or equitable or inclusive transition processes are becoming much more welcome or popular terms or phrases or ideas that sort of try to capture how transitions should take place in ways that include different people or include other ways of knowledge, a kind of knowledge and other ways of life into account. So this quote highlights the importance of here. So highlight importance of incorporating traditional ecological knowledge into decision making through partnership and employment, so that employment can benefit for community resilience and adaptive capacity. So this is some of the ways in which different kinds of societal futures are being produced and try to move and shift decarbonization in ways that is more inclusive and respectful for other knowledge systems and other ways of life. In Japan, just transition is not mentioned directly or frequently, although they have been trying to address that issue and that aspect of transition more in a more direct way. So they've organized or launched a new government organization, to look at how just transition needs to be planned and implemented in Japan. But some of the things that they are really trying to do is that they use different policies. For example, the basic policies for the realization of green transformation to support different parts of the society, or to include them into the transition processes. So for example, supporting laborers and companies to move from high emission industries to lower ones, and to try to produce a more balanced city-region development, try to counter the situation of the concentration on Tokyo, and using not just green transformation policy, but other local regeneration policies to fix many long-standing national problems like the aging population or population crisis, vulnerable communities, labor forces transitions, and so on. So these are some of the issues that have been the problems that Japan has been facing the previous 3 decades. And just transition and decarbonization is just a newer phase for them to use as a way to respond to the revitalization of different regions and the country as well. In Taiwan, we have a very clear focus on just transition. There are different ways that we think just transition can be realized, starting from the more obvious ones, including to ensure that labor employment rights are protected in net zero transition, because a lot of laborers and small to medium-sized companies are going to lose in this process, especially if we look at how digital technologies are becoming important in the transition processes. Those industries and those companies that are not already digitized are going to be more seriously affected than others. Some of other aspects that are really the focus of Taiwan's strategies include to assist domestic industries in making a transition with low carbon manufacturing processes. So again, those are small to medium sizes in terms of how they can move along in that process and not be left behind. But some of the things that are even more important is to protect the diversity of local groups in the regional development. So here you can see some kind of similarity with Japan in terms of also highlighting how regional development is also crucial and the key in the just transition processes. And that is also part of the reason why we say that, because Taiwan has come to decarbonization planning at a later stage than other countries, that we have the benefit of absorbing and learning from the experiences from other countries. But one of the key things I think in Taiwanese planning is trying to embed the thinking and the considerations of societal transition in different areas and in different strategies. So in the beginning, we saw 4 different strategies across different industries in Taiwan's 2015 net zero plans. Let me see if I come back to, here. Right, I can't find the slide now, but what I wanted to say is that even if we look at, for example, industry transition, there are considerations of laborers in different industries and different labor processes that needs to be taken into account. And for transportation to decarbonize, they need to not only look at bigger infrastructures, but also into how taking into account of moving people and people's travel behaviors becoming one of the key areas that they identify as a key to facilitate decarbonization in transportation. So it's not just putting the electrical vehicles in the market, but also trying to think more broadly about why people want to move to electric cars, if it's going to cost them more, or how the overall travel patterns can be moved into accessing or utilizing public transportation more rather than relying on private vehicles. So that's one of the things that's interesting in Taiwan's case, is trying to bring cross-strategy and cross-ministry planning so that these won't become independent strategies from domain to domain. And also, Taiwan emphasizes a lot on public consultations, social dialogues, and stakeholder engagements. Some of those engagements are also mentioned in Japan's different national policies, but in Taiwan there is more of a specific focus on those. But I guess one of the things that we need to be cautious about is whether this kind of conversations or dialogues become just a format, and in the sense that as long as we tell you what we are going to do, that becomes a dialogue, and then you have to accept whatever government is going to roll out. So how those consultations and dialogues become effective and also provide ways to feed back into the decision-making processes, then becomes a key to whether these kind of engagements become meaningful or it just become a tokenized exercise again. Right, so one of the things that people are starting to feel confused is the term just transition itself. Because of Taiwan's political background or history, we have a period of authoritarian rule. And after that, we start to talk about the need to recognize the harms being done during that period of time, and then we call that transitional justice. So whether both in English and both in Chinese, these two terms are very confusing for some of the people, and not just in terms of the words, but also in terms of the concept, because it relies on Western conceptions and discourses, and the questions of what do we mean by justice, and how do we include Aboriginal people in Taiwan into the process. And then when we rely on more and more data analytics to assess environmental impacts on areas prone to natural disasters, these areas are going to be lived by vulnerable groups of people. So how do their data rights going to be protected in that process as the datafication process become digital and datafied? Right, I've just said that. So this is the last slide. So as I was trying to say, there's one decarbonization goal, but many different manifestations, which is probably the thing that comes across again and again. This discussion of different policies are not meant to be exclusive, because there are still new policies being produced and new strategies and actions being produced. It's never-ending work. It's very exhausting. But as part of the project, we have been trying to talk to engineers and scientists, also trying to innovate digital technologies or data analytics in order to meet decarbonization goals. So, and they are also really interested in exploring these societal futures and ethical questions in terms of not just about privacy, but in terms of what kind of future that can be produced when decarbonization becomes digital. So we get a sense of that these kind of intersectoral or interdisciplinary conversations or collaborations can happen, although it's going to be difficult and exhausting again. But if you are interested, we are interested to talk to you about these all different innovations and how they might become part of the decarbonization processes and how that's going to affect us. So talk to us if you are interested, and if any feedback, we'd really appreciate to hear about it. And lastly, thank you very much for coming here, and that's it.
Greta's on the microphone duties. So thanks, Sung-Yuen. For me, that was really interesting to see the way it's all come together and for the different ways it's playing out across 3 different jurisdictions, and particularly the role of, I guess, how economy is a really big part of this. But I will open it up to the audience first if anyone has any questions or thoughts or feedback for Sung-Yuen. Anyone want to start? There's a couple nervous. Deep. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was a very interesting presentation. And I really liked that statement you made on one, decarbonization and many manifestations. And it sort of links to my smart cities research as well, where we talk about how there's no one definition for smart cities, and it's sort of different countries use different versions of smart cities. What's smart is in India is not smart in Australia. Like for us in India, it's about basic infrastructure and 24 hours water and electricity. But what's smart in Australia is very digital centric. So it's quite interesting. Could you just elaborate on some different ways it's decarbonization is manifesting on the ground? Like, is it been implemented already or in different countries?
So talking about the differences of decarbonization on the ground, I can't speak about national differences because the empirical work is being mainly done in Taiwan at the moment. So if anybody here wants to talk to us, please do. But I can talk about different domains if that helps. So in our project, after we started to talk to engineers, scientists, these are based in universities, we started to find what digital or what algorithmic mean to them are quite different, and what algorithms do in terms of achieving decarbonizations are quite complex as well. Some of the areas of work or innovations really focus on how to optimize room temperatures and what kind of issues can emerge. So, for example, are we expressing our body? Are we using different bodily gestures to the same temperature? And if not, can we indifferently use one algorithm developed in the context, for example, in the US, then into a completely different culture, like in Taiwan? So that kind of cultural nuances displayed in different cultures, can they still retain that kind of pronouns in different cultural contexts when these kind of technologies are being produced? That's one of the things that we find interesting. But then making these sort of differences and sameness as well. In the research on urban farming and how digital technologies can facilitate, for example, watering processes, and then so that plants can grow better, put it simply in that way. But so again, there are algorithms developed for or monitoring or optimizing that process. But that algorithm can be developed, for example, in Singapore, and then Singapore have particular kind of landscape, or they focus on particular plants in their research, and that's very different from Taiwan. And making it more complex is that there are different policies in different historical stages in Taiwan. So the kind of combinations on the focus on environment, city, and society is quite recent, and there isn't enough data to be run in terms of training models and algorithms. So these kind of historical, social, societal, and even policy contexts really matter in terms of in different disciplines and different domains of innovations, and how they can, what kind of decarbonization routes they can use technologies to carve. So answering your questions in slightly different way, but how. Yeah.
Any more questions? Yeah.
I actually have 3 questions. So one question is, like there's like a mention about smart charging in Australia. What does that mean? And yes, and starting with this question.
I think that refers to Australia needs to have better electric car charging facilities and infrastructure. I think that's what that meant. Sorry, that wasn't clear in the slide.
And second is for the cross strategy and ministry planning. There's like a case study referring to like if like EVs cost more, then might be not optimal kind of choice for customer to buy it. Like, what is the link to the concept there? Like, I'm a little bit like confused.
Oh, so I think what I was trying to say is that that is a Taiwanese example, is it? I think what I meant to say was that although it's an individual choices in terms of buying electric or fossil fuel cars, there are a lot of policies go into that. For example, how much deductions. Yeah, but then relying on electric vehicles. Yes, but then it's again, very difficult to model or predict how many people are going to willing to jump on that transition, or yeah.
Final question. Like just for Japan, I noticed compared to Australia and Taiwan, Japan has like a much like decarbonization policies much earlier than both other countries. Is there any incentive for these kind of policies?
So, oh, sorry. Do you want two questions together, or? Okay.
It's somewhat related. I'm just curious, you didn't mention about the population of the three countries and also the birth rate, because all three have falling birth rates, but Australia took in about 1 million people between 2022 and 2024. So I'm not sure whether, does that make us a more challenging case? Because I don't know if you're aware, it's election year. And right now, like, I'm not exactly sure, but our opposition party actually just suggested like nuclear power. And I was thinking, hasn't that sailed 20 years ago? But the point is, that brings doubt to people. So I appreciate that, the strategies and policies that each country are putting forward, but yeah, wouldn't Australia be more challenging? Because like within that 1 million people that we took in, a big chunk of them are young people. So bigger population means bigger demand. Even if your smartest systems, can cope, like it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, and we did definitely need to look at that factor more closely when we develop our Australia field work. So thank you for pointing that out for us. Your last question was about. It's about compared to Oh, so why Japan started earlier than other countries? So energy independence and energy supply has always been a big issue for Japan. They are lack of other natural resources for that, and they relied a lot on nuclear energy, and then natural and the disaster made them realize they need to diversify, and they also need to have their own energy strategies. So they have always have that kind of mindset of securing their own energy, but it just manifests in different ways in different stages.
No? So, thank you. I was just wondering, so, we sort of presented it as this reliance on digital technologies to enable this transition, but we also know, as you pointed out, that they can be quite energy intensive in themselves. Have any of the engineers or the tech developers that you've spoken to sort of reflected on this tension or not? Or does it emerge in any way? Or
No. Partly because when we had our conversations, that wasn't one of the topics that we explored. One of the things that we probably should have explored was to ask them to reflect upon when they are using AI to bring all those innovations, have they considered how they try to balance the benefits that can be produced by their research as well as the environmental costs of their research. That's some of the points that were suggested to us, but we didn't have a chance to ask those questions when we were doing our interviews. But we can try to add them on afterwards. Yeah.
So thank you everyone for showing up.
Thank you.